Hi, welcome to First Pages. I have my Himalayan salt lamp glowing here. Man, that thing's bright. To kind of set the mood for the contemporary romance I'm going to read to you, Intertwined Hearts by Kimmy Flores. We'll warn you, it starts out a little bit grim, but it is a really great story. So, bear with me, stick with it, and here we go. And this is told, just, point of view. So the first point of view is Caleb. Baby? The frantic question escaped my lips in an unsteady breath as I leaned in closer. I felt so helpless listening to my wife, Renee, moan in pain as she pushed the back of her head further into the pillow. How much longer would she have to suffer? The muscles in my chest tightened as agony strangled my heart with greedy hands. She'd gone through so much hell, and it was killing me to watch her struggle to stay with us. Blinking hard, I swallowed the thick knot in my throat and did nothing to stop the tears from seeping down my burning, swollen eyes. I'd do anything to switch places with her. Tilting my head back, I stared at the ceiling tiles for the millionth time since she'd been admitted into this room. Why, God? Why her? The corner of my lips trembled when another shaky breath escaped. Despair clawed its way into my core, controlling my every thought and emotion. The short life I'd created with Renee was crashing down, shredding my souls into pieces, and I couldn't do a damn thing to stop it. When we'd first heard the words cervical cancer 2 years ago, we'd hung on to hope. She was so young, surely she'd be able to fight it. Now, with only moments left, I realized how foolish we'd been. The smell of sickness and death lingered in the air, assaulting my nostrils and lungs. This scent would be ingrained in my memories forever. I felt my cousins, Stefan and Bree, along with Renee's parents, standing in the background of the brightly lit hospital room, each of us dreading the moment she would take her final breath. I'm so tired, Caleb. Renee's chest rose as she labored to take shallow, raspy breaths. I don't know how much more I can take. My gaze fell upon her sunken eyes that were encased with dark circles. She let out another painful moan. That sound nearly pushed me over the edge. Thank you. She gave an exhausted cough, for being such an amazing man for our baby girl and me. All Renee had ever wanted was to be a wife and mother. I could barely breathe at the cruel reality of her not being around to enjoy raising our daughter. She blinked and tried to focus on me with purpose. Caleb, please promise me. I need you to move on. For you and for Madison. Unable to hide my emotions, I gave her a pained stare. No, baby, I can't make that promise. With quivering fingers, I leaned over to stroke her pale, bony cheek. You and Madison are my everything. I continued to stare into her glossy eyes while sorrow ripped through my soul. A trembling hand touched my shoulder, attempting to provide comfort. I didn't need to look up to know it was my mother-in-law, Grace. Everyone in the confined space of the hospital room had said goodbye to Renee several hours ago. Now that the doctors had confirmed her end was so close, I wished more than anything that they would all leave. I couldn't ask anyone to do that, though. My cousins and in-laws had endured the stress of watching her slowly fade away and were hurting, just as I was. We'd sat in this room, staring at her for what seemed like forever, when I sensed the light dimming in her once brilliant blue eyes. Placing my hand on the side of her head, I ran my fingers through the few thin auburn strands she had left after all of the chemotherapy. They'd lost so much of their luster since she'd become sick. Her beautiful hair was what had caught my attention when I first laid eyes on her back in college. My heart sunk further as I pulled my hand away, fisting the two strands that remained tangled between my fingers. With a weak smile, she whispered so softly it was difficult to hear, I love you. Make sure Madison knows how much I love her too. Her forced breaths were coming few and far between, and she winced with the effort it simply took to breathe. With those last words, her hand went limp, and her eyes closed as she fell into a morphine-induced slumber. A nurse stayed close, administering the pain medication as needed to ensure Renee's comfort. I bent down, gently pressing my trembling lips to hers. I love you too. I always will. With that kiss, her final breath escaped. The piercing hum of the heart monitor confirmed what I couldn't bear to accept. She was gone. I no longer felt or saw anyone else in the room, only my wife, my now deceased wife. No, no, no! Come back to me, please! My bitter, violent sobs echoed throughout the room as I gripped her frail, unresponsive body. Renee danced across the warm, candlelit room, wearing her slinky cream-colored dress. Snug on top and flowing from the waist down, The silk that covered her tantalized and called out to me. Long auburn hair cascaded over her shoulder, enticing me to reach out to her. I approached my beautiful bride and took her into my arms before dipping her slender body backward. Something always felt off whenever she wore this dress, but I decided to push those eerie feelings aside. She was in my arms where she belonged, and that was all that mattered. Seeking the warm comfort of her lips, I covered her mouth with my own, only to feel cold, rigid skin. Jerking away, I found lifeless eyes staring back. I'd known better than to believe this was real. Anguish overtook me, stabbing my heart as I fell to my knees with her encased in my arms. No! With a sharp pang in my chest, I bolted up in bed, gasping for air. My eyes darted around the room, desperate to focus on my surroundings. Just enough light filtered through the heavy drapery to confirm that I was in my bedroom, alone. Puffing out of breath, I fell back against the sweat-covered sheets while throwing my arm over my closed eyes. Just another nightmare. The impact of the actual event had haunted my dreams countless nights. My wife was gone, and I was here, caring for our daughter, all by myself. Damn it, is it ever going to get easier? They say time heals all wounds, but with the sorrow I'd experienced in the last 4 years, I wasn't so sure. Although I was in a much better place, the gaping dark hole in my heart still left me feeling empty and lonely. Even now, I couldn't bring myself to lay across our entire bed. I turned to face what used to be her side and ran my hand across the cold, empty sheet. Taking another deep breath, I looked up at the ceiling and raked my fingers through my hair, then rubbed my palms over my eyes, trying to press back the sting of tears. Frustrated that I still struggled to push past the grief, I forced myself to switch my focus. Today was a new day, a special one. Our beautiful daughter Madison was starting kindergarten, and she'd been giddy about it all summer. I had to keep it together for her. Doing my best to shake the disturbing dream, I got out of bed and stretched my back, then grabbed a shirt and pulled it over my head. I needed to take a shower, but that could wait until after breakfast. The wood floors were a little chilly under my bare feet as I strolled down the hallway into my little girl's room. Standing in the doorway, I gazed at the small wooden chair in the corner of her pink bedroom. On the chair sat Madison's first day of school outfit that she'd selected last week. Each piece was perfectly laid out, as if on display. Tiny jean capris and a light pink top with daisies embroidered on the sleeves. She'd also placed her matching pink Mary Jane shoes under the chair. I smiled bitterly to myself, feeling that same sting against the back of my eyes. Renee would have loved this, but I couldn't dwell, not today. Quietly clearing my throat, I pushed that thought far from my mind and tiptoed to the twin-sized bed. I sat down on the fluffy comforter and brushed strands of Madison's ash-brown hair away from her face. My heart filled with so much love whenever I laid eyes on my baby girl. She was a perfect combination of both Renee and me. Her long eyelashes fanned out above her chubby cheeks where I leaned over to place gentle butterfly kisses. I knew how much she loved when I did that, so it was no surprise when I heard her giggle. "You faker, you were awake the whole time," I tickled her ribs. "Yes, Daddy, but I didn't want you to be sad. You didn't give me my butterfly kiss yet, so I stayed here till you did." A silly smile appeared on her lips as her large, round, brown eyes looked up, melting my heart as usual. She was growing up so fast. It seemed like just yesterday I was walking in this same room to pick her up from her crib. I had to wonder what would be left for me when she was old enough to leave and start her own life. Taking a moment to let it sink in, I threw back her covers. "Come on, let's get ready for your special day, my big kindergartner." I stood and turned around so she could climb onto my back like she did every morning. From the bed she leaped and landed, her nightgown scrunched up around her knees. She wrapped her legs around my waist and her arms around my neck while making her first request of the day. "Can I have chocolate chip pancakes for breakfast?" "Of course you can." With the ever-present ache in my chest, I carried her down the stairs, thinking anything for my sweet angel. My life revolved around taking care of her, and I planned to fulfill every reasonable wish she would ever make. Abby. Letting out a soft sigh, I reached for my cell to turn off the alarm. I stretched and rubbed the sleep out of my eyes as I remembered what day it was, the first day of school. With a smile on my lips, I sat up, stepped onto the cold morning floor, and slid into my fuzzy slippers. I could only imagine what my haphazard morning hair looked like as I shuffled toward the bathroom to shower. Stepping under the water, I felt the warmth cascading down my back and thought about how fortunate I was to be getting ready for this day. I'd survived all those awful budget cuts. Thank God. Many teachers, including several of my friends who'd worked for traditional schools, had gotten pink slips just before summer break, and I was shocked I hadn't received one as well. Charter schools were all the rage in California, and although I was initially skeptical about working for a school that was part of a new fad, I couldn't be more grateful now. Our growing school was thriving, with new students every year, and we were hiring teachers rather than laying them off. Toweled and dried, I grabbed the outfit I'd set out last night. Given that August in Santa Barbara was still a warm month, I'd chosen a dusty rose cotton button-down tunic and black leggings. It was comfy yet modest. This time, every year, I felt like a kid again and couldn't wait to meet all our new families. I made my way to the refrigerator and grabbed the breakfast and lunch I'd prepared the night before. One more glance in the mirror in the entryway, and I slipped into a pair of ballet flats, snatching my purse, keys, and cell phone before heading out of my bungalow. Feeling nervous excitement about starting my day, I locked the door as Mr. Ruther's cat from next door rubbed all over my legs, leaving a trail of long white fur on my leggings. So much for making a good impression today. I tried unsuccessfully to brush most of it off as I made my way down the brick path toward my driveway. The sky was blue and my flowers were in bloom. The day couldn't get any prettier. I took a deep breath, loving the fragrance of the white evening primrose and lavender in my flower beds. Getting in and starting up my car, I headed to my favorite coffee shop. Not the one that sold the fancy coffees for $4 a cup. I preferred my cup of joe from a local convenience store. They didn't mind when I poured just as much vanilla creamer in my cup as I did coffee. I was a simple girl and didn't need frou-frou coffee. With my filled travel mug in hand, I was back on the road. Taking a quick sip, I lifted my feet as I drove over the train tracks that ran through town. I never understood that silly tradition, but that didn't keep me from doing it every time. Claiming my spot in the staff parking lot, I walked into the school, feeling butterflies in my stomach. With quick steps, I headed straight to the teacher's lounge, retrieving a couple of papers from my mailbox. A few other teachers were hanging around, talking about their summer vacations and complaining about the break being too short. I was the odd one out. I couldn't wait to get to the classroom I'd spent all week decorating. I sat down at my desk and started to reflect as I ate my breakfast. Had it really only been 3 years since I started working here? It felt as though I was created to do this. Growing up with a single mom, who also taught, had clued me in that this wasn't the most lucrative career choice, but I was passionate about teaching kids. Like most teachers, I didn't do it to receive a whopping paycheck. After memorizing all my students' names over the last couple weeks, I was eager to match faces to them. Noting the time, I tossed my banana peel and plastic yogurt container into the trash, took hold of the kids' name tags, and headed to the gate to greet my new students and their families. It didn't take long before I recognized some of the parents and other family members from the community I'd finally grown up in, including my mother's friends, Grace and Robert Westbrook. They both wore cheerful smiles as I made eye contact. The first time I'd met them, I learned that they'd lost their only daughter several years ago. I'd also learned that she'd left behind a little girl and a husband. I felt a heaviness in my chest when my eyes met the precious girl who bounced next to them. I'd seen that sweet face a few years ago at my mom's house when Grace and Robert had visited. The couple walked hand in hand around the mass of teary-eyed families who were having a hard time letting their little ones start their first day of school. When they were close enough, Grace grabbed me for a quick hug and introduced the angelic child. "Hi, Miss Abby. This is our granddaughter, Madison. She'll have the honor of being in your class this year," Grace proudly proclaimed, smiling ear to ear. I squatted down, balancing myself on the balls of my feet, so I was at Madison's eye level. I took her hand in greeting. "It's very nice to meet you, Madison. The honor is mine. I can't wait to learn all about you." With a cheerful smile, I slipped the name tag over her head. The happy little girl handed me a flower and offered a toothy grin. "Nice to meet you too, Miss Abby." She motioned to someone standing by her side. "This is my daddy. We play in the ocean all the time and watch hockey a lot. Oh, and my daddy gives me the bestest butterfly kisses." I blinked. "Daddy?" I gazed up to see an incredibly handsome tall man next to Madison. His prominent brows shadowed his eyes from the sunlight, making it difficult to determine the color. It took a moment to realize I was still squatting while I gawked up at him. Madison let out a giggle as he stared back, probably contemplating whether it was a good idea to leave his daughter with me. Self-conscious, I stood up on wobbly legs and looked directly at his broad chest. Focusing on the hockey team's logo displayed on his t-shirt, I forced myself to bring my eyes back up to his face. Sounds like Caleb might not be alone for too much longer. He seems to have made an impression on Abby. What do you think? If you'd like to find out, please click on the buy links in the description and read the rest of Intertwined Hearts by Kimmy Flores. I hope you enjoyed this edition of First Pages. Thank you for supporting authors, and as always, happy reading.